Welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, and exhausted Evan Ginsberg. And we'll find out why in just a second. So let's start with the top, part of. Well, first of all, let's mention the unfortunate passing of Roddy Hogan, which I found out from your page today.
Yeah, Roddy Hogan, for those who don't know, he would dress up as Hulk Hogan, who was his wrestling hero, not mine, his wrestling hero. And he'd turn up at the arenas, and Hogan actually started to recognize him and would bring him into the ring, and they would pose together. And he was a colorful guy, and the fans knew him. And there's another guy, Randy Hogan. This is a different guy. This is Roddy Hogan. And he had been sick off and on and in and out of hospitals. So I can't say I'm shocked. And he was in his 70s, I believe. But
it just goes to show one thing that people sort of forget about wrestling, which is that part of the attraction to going to a wrestling show live is not just who's in the ring, but it's the fans that are in the stands. There are some you will sit in the stands sometimes and meet some really colorful people if you care to extend yourself. Now, sometimes you get, the Cletus the slack-jawed yokel types, with with 3 rows of fans and 5 teeth between them, as I used to say, as Buddy Sotelo when I used to taunt the crowd. But then there are, people out there who are genuinely just in their heart, just so in love with the product, and they make the signs and they wear the T-shirts and they cosplay it up because it means so much to them. And people kind of forget, wrestling wouldn't be what it is right now if it wasn't for fans like that. Do you know what I mean? Vince McMahon forgets about that. Triple H forgets about that. But it's those crazy ass MFers that love the product so much, even when you subject them to Mae Young and the Hand. Even when you subject them to Kane and the Undertaker and the necrophilia angle, even when you subject them to commercial after commercial break or signings where, I don't know if Hulk Hogan ever charged Roddy Hogan to appear with him or anything like that, but Hogan doesn't appear with anybody without charging big bucks for it right now. And yet fans, we read that, or we heard about that story where Hulk Hogan stood up those people who were waiting 8 hours to see him. It's fans like that you don't find anywhere, even in football, even in whatever. The wrestling fans that are insane about wrestling are more insane about wrestling than anyone is about any other sport anywhere, including British soccer, all of that stuff. What do you have to say?
I think for some it crosses a line where you become a money mark and it becomes a religious pilgrimage type thing. And I just think if you're sitting in a nosebleed seat at WrestleMania and can't see the ring or can't see the screen and you're watching on your phone for $400, I think you've crossed the line into a money mark and a sucker. But for somebody down at the local indie who loves it with all their heart and never misses a show and supports the indie wrestlers and buys their merch and lives and breathes it and knows all the angles, I think it could be really a wonderful escape from real life. I was down at Colossal Championship Wrestling Saturday night, a local indie. And I shouldn't even say local indie because they have shows, in various parts of the country, Florida and such, but they come into New York a couple times a year. And those fans know every wrestler They know the ring announcer. They know the managers. They know the angles. They live and breathe it. And when the show comes every 2 or so months, to them it's important and it's can't miss. And
That
that's
is the way
part
it
of it.
was when we did our California Championship Wrestling stuff up in Newman or down in Newman. It was out in the middle of nowhere, but to these people out in the middle of nowhere, this was the only live entertainment that would come to their town, that would perform for them. I mean, that was the reason why we went to the middle of nowhere. You perform in a place like San Francisco, you got to compete against all sorts of live acts and things that there are to do. But you go to Newman, out in the middle of California, there's nothing to do. And these people, they really set their calendars by the fact that you're going to come there, every month or once every couple months, and it means a lot to them. And I guess wrestling is in a situation, it is weird because I think wrestling is both embarrassed by the super hardcore fan and yet couldn't exist without it. As you just said, the idea, the concept of a money mark, that you don't hear that in football, and you don't hear that in baseball, you don't hear that in basketball. People being called money marks, but you don't even hear that in theater or opera or anything like that. Opera marks.
Well, in opera and theater, they call the supporters of the actual staging of the shows angels, theatrical
Right.
angels. They put cash in and
Correct.
help these shows get off the ground and survive.
Sure.
But I think for example, one of my friends just sent me, they're selling a John Cena chair for $401 because 400 wouldn't be quite enough.
No, 400 is a bargain. They gotta look. They gotta have some wiggle room. You got to be able to come down a little bit. So you sell it for 400. You say, what a bargain you got. You could have paid $401.
Yeah. So if you're buying a $401 chair and think you're impressing the neighbors who aren't wrestling fans, you're a money mark. I'm sorry. But the other side of it is I went to this show Saturday night at the Elks Lodge, as I was saying. $25 a ticket. You're sitting right on top of the action. You meet the wrestlers. You get autographs. You talk to the wrestlers. It's a very different experience than going to a corporate vanilla WWE show. And let me add this, and I mean this sincerely. The main event Saturday night was Cha-Cha Charlie against Tommy Invincible. And the following night, when I was at TNA and I saw 10 matches at TNA with big name stars, many of whom have worked for WWE or will work for them in the future. Trick Williams was in the main event from NXT. Tommy Invincible and Cha-Cha Charlie had a better match than 6 or 7 out of the 10 matches at TNA. And I mean that sincerely. The only matches that I would rank higher, and these are also, legitimate pros, Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander had a kick-ass match. Oh my God, it was great. And Moose and Slater, what's his name again? Leon Slater, kid, 20 years old, tore the place up. This kid was doing high spots you wouldn't believe. And Moose, it was like a little guy against the big man, and it worked. That's real old school. And the ladder match was pretty crazy with the Hardys and everybody else. So I would say, with the exception of those 3 matches, Cha-Cha Charlie and Tommy Invincible had a better match than the other 7 matches on the card. And here's the kicker. Who do I see backstage at TNA? I was in the press section. There's Cha-Cha Charlie. So he's on their radar. And I'm saying to myself, he should be wrestling instead of, walking around backstage, because he put on a better match than the vast majority of the guys on that card. Big name professional wrestlers.
I hope he
So
gets a shot. I hope he gets a shot there.
I hope he does, because he's not a kid, and there's ageism in wrestling. There's ageism, and they want to
Well,
groom.
it's. I mean, you could say there's ageism in all athletic, endeavors, because you have to be a young guy to be able to do some of this stuff. I mean,
Except he was doing it
right.
on a very high level. Look,
I understand. I understand.
I did a post. I did a post about that particular match, Tommy Invincible and Cha Cha Charlie, and I said I'm jaded. I've been attending wrestling 51 years, and that was a top-notch match. It was a quality match that's on the same level and better. That was better than every single match I saw on Saturday Night Main Event, WWE, the other week.
Well, it is great that a guy with the experience and the knowledge of Cha Cha Charlie and the drive that Cha Cha Charlie has hopefully can pay off with him getting a major television spot.
He's worked for AEW, so they realize he's on that level. So here's the thing. Whether he has 5 years left in the tank, 10 years left in it, whatever it is, I mean, this guy's got charisma off the charts. And Tommy Invincible, somebody said to me that Triple H actually mentioned Tommy Invincible at some point, like he's on their radar. I mean, I know talent when I see it, because I've been to thousands and thousands of matches literally around the world. And, it's like, give these guys a shot. It doesn't have to be, and please don't think this is racist or something, because that's not the point of what I'm about to make. Okay, they had another of the bloodline at TNA the other night, another Fatu. Somebody told me, I believe it was Umaga's son, Zilla Fatu, I believe his name was.
Yitzhak Fatu.
Yeah, Yitzhak. Yeah. So people won't even get that joke if they're not Jewish. But anyway, this guy got like this huge hype, and he came out with 6 guys in a 3-minute match, and he didn't like wildly impress me. He didn't have the time to. But my point being, there's so much nepotism in wrestling. If you're somebody's son, somebody's nephew, somebody's whatever, you're next in line. And if somebody else doesn't have the connections, it's 10 years of paying your dues before you're noticed.
Yeah, we call that the Greg Gagne syndrome.
Greg Gagne was not that bad. I'm sorry.
He's my least favorite wrestler of all time. I hated him.
I saw Gagne live many times. The AWA came to New Jersey. He was always good or very good. I would not say, he was not Don Morocco, but the guy was good.
But without his father, he probably would have never been in the business at all.
You can say that about a lot of people in the business.
Well, I mean, there's some guys who are qualified. I mean, who actually, look at Randy Orton, for example. He's made his own career probably much greater. I mean, far greater than anything his father ever accomplished. Bob. I mean,
I love Bob. I'm the only guy in the world who will say I like Cowboy Bob Orton much better than Randy Orton. but I grew up on Orton and Piper headlining the Garden, like tearing the place up. And I loved Cowboy Bob Orton, one of my favorites. So Randy Orton, he's tremendous, but it's the same 5 moves and the same shtick, and he's, going to use the same finisher. And I never enjoyed Randy Orton as much as Bob Orton, and I'm the only guy who will say that, and I stand by it. But that's from my experience.
Okay, well, I mean, Randy's got the titles and the appearances and all the different WrestleManias and all the pay-per-views
Was
and all that
very
other stuff.
impressed recently that Randy Orton publicly came out and talked about having depression and battling it and overcoming it. And, when you're a big star, it's brave to put that out there and share that and hopefully inspire people to overcome it. And I could tell people that there's certain things that can be done, to help yourself if you're going through this. Exercise, good sleep, good diet, throwing yourself into something creative. Pets are very calming. Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, going to the gym, the endorphins kick in. There are things people can do to help themselves. It doesn't always have to be medication. I mean, depending what the situation is, you may need medication, but
The thing is, there's no there, and you touched upon it so poignantly in The Wrestler, is that there really isn't a substitute for fame. There isn't a substitute for performing, and I felt it myself. I mean, it's the kind of thing that when you take that away from somebody, there isn't just an easy, just here it is. You can do some Tai Chi and that'll just take the place of performing in front of,
Oh, true,
10,000 fans.
A singer needs to sing, an actor needs to act, the wrestler needs to wrestle, a heel manager needs to manage. And as a teacher, one of the things I do, I'm happier when I'm teaching than, I mean, even today, it's like I felt bad when I heard Roddy died. I knew Roddy, there's a barrage of bad news. You go on social media, you have idiots savaging each other, the libtards versus deplorables thing, back and forth, ad nauseum. Sometimes I'm just happier. I'm standing in front of a class. I'm entertaining them. It's improv. Yeah, at this point, I've done it so long. It's not like I'm doing hours and hours of lesson planning. It's basically improv, and you could motivate people. You could change people's lives. I'll bump into old students on the street from years ago. They'll tell me, I learned English with you. I went to college. I got a good job.
It's the same thing in wrestling. It's the same thing in wrestling in the sense that the guys that you work with, and that brought you up, like for instance, guy that we have had on the show, you weren't on when I had him on, is a guy by the name of Shane Dynasty, and you may have heard of him because he has been a manager and a wrestler for many years here in Northern California, but given the situation that happened with Sir Samurai, who died literally in the ring, I think that, he's decided he doesn't want to do any more ring work because, it's just, you're putting so much at risk. And when you get older, you realize, when you're younger, when I first started doing wrestling myself, I was about 30. I was in my late 30s, okay, which was stupid because I should have done it when I was in my 20s, when I was in much better shape. But instead, it just didn't come to me till my 30s. And so the bumps that I took, I can handle them. But the stuff that I was taking when I first started wrestling, managing, and the bumps that I took, I would just get up the next day and be, I'm a little sore or whatever. And then that turns into, every other day, you're like, okay, I'll feel better, by Friday. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to feel better next Friday. And then I'm going to feel better a month from now.
Yeah.
And then it's like 6 months from now, you're like, how come that injury didn't go away? And then stuff starts becoming permanent, and you're like, oh, that's not going to ever work right again. And that's a large price to pay for guys like Shane, for guys like Samurai, and that, when you say, hey, a guy like Cha Cha Charlie, get in there and he can do all those bumps, and he can, but you look at Misawa, for example. one of those bumps is going to be your last one if you don't ever say that there's a limit, and whenever you don't respect your body enough, you know, that final one that you take is going to be your last one. And it almost happened to
And
Samurai.
and I've seen many of my heroes as an agent in wheelchairs. Lou Albano, Iron Sheik, Holly Race in a wheelchair at the end. Abdullah the Butcher, Lou Albano. I mean,
You don't have to even go that far back, because you can look at Lex Luger right now and the condition he's
Luger,
in.
yeah. So these guys really, really sacrifice. I've had indie wrestlers who never made the money say to me, Evan, I'm always in pain. I've had 10, 12, 14 concussions, and it's a big risk. It's a risk to your mental health. You have too many concussions. Yeah, well, one bad concussion, whatever the case may be.
There's even the news that Buff Bagwell has lost his leg in a car accident or motorcycle accident.
Yeah, I saw that, and yeah, he's had a tough life. Yeah, it was sad to see that, because he was such a big, strong guy in his youth, and you know,
And he is unfortunately one of those stories that you can say that he spent his money on wine, women, and song. He is the kind of guy that had a lot of money at one point in time, and he was getting paid a lot of money from WCW, and he didn't spend it well.
Well, it was interesting in a shoot interview with him, or an interview, he said that when he went to WWE, they paid him a lot less, and he still had that, expensive mortgage and expensive car payment. This is the same trap that a lot of NBA and NFL players
Sure.
fall into. You think you're going to be out there for 20 years, and you
Or
get
rap
an injury.
stars. Rap stars fall into this too. They live
All kinds of musicians, not just rappers.
Right,
I mean,
right.
the money's coming in fast and furious in the beginning, and then it dries up. And it could be as simple as a change in musical taste. R&B became, kind of your dad's music, and then it was hip hop. So what happens to the R&B musicians, et cetera, so on. And all of a sudden that money's not coming in, but you still have the mortgage payments and all the bills coming in, and they haven't really seen the possibility of that. There's an old expression: he bought too much house. It's like, I bought a one-bedroom co-op. I didn't buy a multi-million-dollar house. So my mortgage is obviously going to be a lot smaller than somebody
Yeah, you're probably
else.
really glad you did too, especially in New York, because if you tried to get it today, you probably wouldn't be able to.
Well, yes and no. Had I bought a house, the house would be worth over $1 million today, and the apartment
Sure.
is worth a small fraction of that. So, there's pluses and minuses with everything, but I bought what I could afford at the time, and it was a struggle, but you can knock out a 15-year mortgage. It doesn't have to be an endless 25, 30-year mortgage, but it's a struggle when you're not making big money.
Yeah, and when you don't have plans for it, and I think that was the thing, you don't have plans for what you do when you're not involved in wrestling, and that's unfortunately Bagwell, lived for today and didn't think about what would happen to tomorrow, and a lot of people.
He was a male prostitute servicing women. I mean, and in an interview I saw with him, he says he was embarrassed by it, but people do what they have to do to make those mortgage payments.
Yeah, I've mentioned on the show that I did work one card with Buff Bagwell.
I thought you were going to say you worked one day as a male prostitute.
Oh, yeah, well, thanks.
And that's not
yes.
a character.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think you would have to work the other. Maybe I worked as a reverse prostitute, but not, nobody's been paying me for anything like that. But no, I worked one show with Buff Bagwell at BTW, and I don't want to speak ill of the dead because he's not dead, but he is in bad shape, and I do feel bad for the shape he's in. But he was the least professional wrestler I ever worked with of any of the veterans that I've ever worked with. The only one that I would say was a little bit weirder to work with was Manny Fernandez, but otherwise, Buff Bagwell, he showed up late, he was drunk, he put together a terrible match. He didn't say hi to anybody in the locker room. He just went right to the guy that he was working with, went over his match for like 5 minutes. Then they did the thing, and as soon as he finished his match, he went back in his car with his girlfriend while his wife was looking for him and drove off. And we never. The only discussion he had with anybody was with the guys managing. He and Buff were discussing what was worse, a Jack Daniels burp or a Captain Morgan burp. Which one hurt more to have? And then
That's a beautiful story.
It is, and so a guy that unfortunately takes the business that unseriously, and I think he looked at his life so unseriously and just lived for the moment, not for anything for the future. Unfortunately, now that he's in the situation that he's in, I don't know what kind of future he's going to have. And I foresee a number of GoFundMes coming in or, something along those lines.
So since you mentioned GoFundMes, let me tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly of GoFundMes. I've been doing a GoFundMe for Chris Michaels.
For Pudgy, yeah.
Pudgy, we put it together, and we raised about $4,000 in 4 weeks, and it's not bad. The other side of it is people will call you a beggar. I'm not taking a penny of this. I'm just trying to help a friend. People will complain. I'm going to tell the admin of this page that this shouldn't be up here. Yeah, let's sabotage a GoFundMe. The guy's a U.S. veteran, blue collar guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough if you just turn away from it, you don't do anything at all. That's fine, but to sabotage it is ridiculous. Why? What do you have to gain? Well, I mean, what does somebody have to gain?
Well, the psychiatrist would say the guy's a cheap scumbag, and he rationalizes it's all a scam because he doesn't want to dig into his pocket for $1 or something setting him off, misdirected anger.
Hey, if someone is on the side of the street with a sign saying, spare change, it's one thing to walk by. I mean, everybody does that somewhere in their lives. But it's another thing to stop and kick the guy while he's holding the sign.
Yeah. I mean, the worst GoFundMe experience I ever had many years ago, Melissa Coates, who was a dear friend.
Oh, yeah, we did a tribute show to her, and it's one of our most clicked on shows.
She was at my wedding. There's a piece on her in my book.
Yeah, she's behind you in the
Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. There's a piece on her. So she was Sabu's girlfriend and really partner, practically, like a wife. They were together a real long time. And Sabu's having a hip replacement. Now, any genius who understands wrestling or the human body would understand this was legit. The guy destroyed his body. The GoFundMe was totally legit. So,
and I can tell you how much they cost since I had to have them myself in 2016.
How much?
Yeah. Oh, it was thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, my wife, it was $65,000. She had a car wreck in Korea. It was $65,000. So, I mean, we had insurance, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So you don't have good insurance or you have no insurance.
Well, when people go, well, you have insurance, and say your insurance covers 80% of the cost.
That's still a big hit.
Yeah, if you owe $65,000, well, 20% of that is going to be, $15,000. Yeah, exactly. So that's not chump change that everybody just has lying around, Yeah.
So the punchline to the story is, I'm trying to help my friend and her boyfriend. I'm promoting the GoFundMe, And these two podcast scumbags, not the guys you're thinking of, those are
Yeah.
different scumbags.
Yeah, they have to get in line.
Yeah. These guys were out in the Midwest somewhere. I don't even remember their names, honestly.
Good.
I honestly don't. It's a long
Good.
time ago.
I don't want to give them publicity.
Yeah, I couldn't if I wanted to. I don't remember their names, but they publicly go, this is just for him to get drugs, and it's a scam, and which they're totally wrong. It was 100% legit. The guy needed a hip replacement, So then the kicker, the punchline is, we're going to trash that Evan for perpetuating this fraud or whatnot. So they do a podcast, and they have like 34 listeners or whatnot. So I just go, I'm just going to ignore this completely. To give them publicity would make no sense. Just let it die. And I never heard from them again. And that was that. But my point being, no good deed goes unpunished. I'm working hard to promote something to help somebody, and you get heat for it, And then the fanboys who do the quote, the wrestlers, they all pissed it away on Wine, Women, and Song. Not true. No. Many of them never made the money to begin with. They're pushing a broom after they're wrestling. They're working a door as a bouncer. They have some crap job, no benefits. And sometimes,
and let's also think about the times that a lot of these guys were wrestling. Okay, you're talking like a lot of them were in the 70s or even the late 60s. Okay, where wrestling, especially in the 80s, when you get to the 80s, being a wrestler was like being a rock star, and that lifestyle. The wrestlers weren't the only ones that spent caprice, in crazy ways. As you pointed out, rock performers did, athletes did, stockbrokers did, coke dealers did. If they had money, that the 80s was a time of the me decade and the yuppie-isms and people that were so into spending money on themselves.
The other thing that people forget, I'm older than a lot of our listeners. People didn't really know that coke was bad in the beginning. People didn't really know that steroids were bad in the beginning or could be potentially bad.
No, Arnold Schwarzenegger, stuck himself in the wide open in front of everybody, and was pushing steroids to everyone he could,
Later he had heart surgery.
Right. And so, like cigarettes in the 50s, nobody really knew the depth of it until everyone started doing it and, started dying from it. So, I mean.
And then the spin was, cigars aren't as bad as cigarettes. Or filtered
chewing tobacco.
Bad. Yeah.
Or chewing tobacco. Remember that, they were saying that, at least you won't get lung cancer, but then your jaw falls off.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there are. And so it is hard to judge backwards with today's knowledge of certain things, to look back on like the way people partied in the 80s and in the 90s, and then cast aspersions on it and say, well, how stupid they were, how stupid everyone was to have unprotected sex when, and then AIDS came around. Well, before AIDS came around, no one knew that would be a penalty of, that you would die from having sex. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do find that there's a lot of judgment on the way people were in the past based on what we know today. And that is one of the things I think a lot of wrestlers deal with, the kind of perception that we look at wrestlers today, and they're generally smarter and do more with their money and are more savvy. We don't hear these total disasters of like poor guys like Kamala, you know, and Luke Bushwhacker, and or was it Butch?
Butch died.
Butch died.
Butch
Sorry.
died needing a GoFundMe. Luke's still here. Um, the other thing is they didn't make the money people think they made. A lot of the stars never broke 100 grand,
Yeah.
and it's a myth that they all pissed away fortunes because they never made fortunes. A
No,
lot.
and they had a lot of expenses. They had a lot of expenses.
Yeah, I was telling somebody a couple days ago. Let's say you were making 400 grand in the mid 80s. It was a lot of money, but that's 400 grand minus taxes. You're going to lose about half of it right there. Then it's about 100,000 in road expenses. You're working over 300 days a year. Then you're supporting your family back home. Okay, that money's going to go. It's not like you have millions and millions of dollars and you're pissing it away. It's
Yeah, and then you get medical expenses, and that really taps out a lot of these guys. You know,
or Vince is pushing that superhero physique on you, and what are you doing to sustain that?
no, that's right. And so for a lot of those guys, they did turn to steroids, you know, and that cost a lot of money for them too. You know,
And if you were hurt, and inevitably wrestlers do get hurt, you're working in pains because you're scared to lose your spot, and you're taking whatever you need to take to get to the next match and to not lose your spot and take time off to heal. So,
and there was no such thing as paid time off. You only got paid when you wrestled. You know, unless you had some other job, you know, that you were doing for the WWE, working in the back office or sales or something like that. You know, like a hillbilly Jim kind of thing.
Fans watch their shoot interviews and read their wrestling books, and they think they understand it, but until you hear it from their mouths, it's they don't quite get it, the whole picture. And sure, there were some guys who pissed away a lot of money. That's any sport. But when they say all, like they were all rich and they were all like wild and crazy, it's just not true. Nikolai Volkov saved his money. Lanny Poffo saved his money. Johnny Valiant saved his money. But Johnny Valiant never made a lot of money.
Right. No, you know, Mick Foley has been smart with his money, and certainly The Rock has. You know, there's
Rock made a lot more money than a lot of territories guys.
Exactly. He's made more money than a few countries, actually, at this stage. But so let's have a little bit, while we have some time, why don't you give a wrap up of what you saw over at the TNA show?
I'm going to walk you through the whole thing.
Okay.
I leave my house. I get to the Long Island Railroad, and it's shut down. It's literally shut down. And
why?
It was only going in one direction, and it wasn't the direction I'm going to.
Damn.
Okay. Now, why was I going to the Long Island Railroad? Because I saw on the New York City subway app that the subways were having problems. But now I had no choice but to go to the subway. So I get to the subway, and of course, there's no problems. The app is just wrong. So I get to the place, and you know, it's not a bad trip, but there's huge lines everywhere, and nobody knows what the lines are for because it's like absolute chaos. And you finally
that reminds me of when I went to the Dead & Co concert at Oracle Park in San Francisco. There were lines, but we didn't know what it was for, and we got on two of the wrong lines and waited about 45 minutes.
Exactly.
We realized we were on the line that we were supposed to be on was way over there, and it took us like a whole city block to walk around to get to the right line.
And this is a major arena, UBS Arena. You would think, you know, signs aren't that complex technology.
Or hire some people to just say, hey, this is the line for general admission. This is the line you go in when you have a seat, a pre-assigned seat. And if you're going to go to the field, you want a field view, you go into this line. I feel you there. I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
you.
It was like a mantra, one person after another. What's this line for? What's
I
this
don't know.
line for? Excuse
I
me,
don't
what's
know.
this line for?
I don't know. I'm just
Okay.
standing here.
So I finally get into the building after figuring it out, and nice venue. And as you walk through the park into the building, tons of young people smoking weed, which is a different crowd than the WWE, parents with little kiddies. It's a different crowd. More people in their 20s and 30s. I was one of the oldest people there. And big lines for the merchandise. These are serious fans. Yeah. So the pre-show is 7 to 8, and they have 3 matches that are utterly forgettable. And now the opener, it's 8 o'clock. The pay-per-view
When
is
did the
on.
pre-show start?
The pre-show started at 7.
Okay.
And the show went to 11:30. That's a 4.5-hour,
Oh my
10-match show.
Oh my God.
Okay. So the show starts, and it's Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander, and these guys were great. 4 stars I gave it. I thought it was the best match of the night. Others said Moose and Leon Slater. Apples and oranges. They were both great, different types of matches. And I've always liked Cedric Alexander. I saw many times live with ROH. I never saw the guy in a bad match. Never. He's really underrated. And he's bulked up, not heavy. I mean, muscular. He's bulked up, and he still flies. And great match. Then the second match was one of these deals where you have like 8 guys, and it was just nothing special. Let me just pull up the results, because some of it was instantly forgettable. The system and Matt Cardona against Dark State, instantly forgettable. Matt Cardona is really good, and he's a hometown favorite. He's a Long Island guy, but nothing match. And that was followed by Masha Slamovich and JC Jane, the NXT champ. So you would think this was TNA's biggest card ever, 7,623, the biggest crowd they ever drew. You would think they would put over the NXT. You would think they would put over the TNA talent. Of course, the NXT talent won.
Wow.
And it was not a great match. And also, I jumped ahead one. Right before that was Indy Hartwell and Tessa Blanchard, which was solid, but nothing great. Solid, I won't remember.
Yeah, we talked about Tessa Blanchard on the other show that I'm gonna have next week with Tony Fury, and Tessa Blanchard is a real like enigma to me. I mean, she's someone that should be more successful than she is now, and yet just that kind of success has sort of evaded her, and she's kind of in the mid card of a TNA show, makes me think that maybe she's never gonna quite click.
I didn't think the match was great. I mean, it built at the end. It wasn't bad. I gave it 3 stars, I believe. Yeah, 3 stars.
But it was so good you didn't even remember it a day later.
I mean, it was nothing special, honestly.
I agree. I don't doubt you. I'm just saying that I'm surprised that Tessa has just sort of mired her way into mediocrity when it looked like she was really going somewhere.
I mean, she's a solid wrestler, but
right.
I don't see her in great matches. I see her in good and very good matches.
Correct.
And
I thought by now she would be a major name in women's wrestling, and she's just not.
There's a ton of WWE, AEW, TNA wrestlers who every night of the week will come out and have an okay, good, or very good match, and she's one of them. But they rarely attain greatness, and that's a big difference. And
You're right.
like LA Knight, I don't get the hype. I've never seen this guy in a great match in WWE. Never. And this guy's in big matches, and it's like all sizzle, no steak. At some point, you have to deliver. And there's a ton of guys like that who come out every day of the week, and they're okay. The Miz,
Yeah.
they rave about the Miz. You know, where are the great matches?
I don't. But that's
Yeah.
So keep going up the card here.
All right. So then they had Moose and Leon Slater. This kid's 20 years old. I think he's British. And this was a great match. I mean, this kid, dynamic, you know, energy, charisma, amazing moves. You know, I mean, he's one crazy move away from like blowing out his knee or whatever, like inevitably all these guys do. But he, you know, just great. And it was, I gave it 3 3/4 stars. You know, it's all subjective. Some people thought it was better than the Ali and Cedric Alexander match. It's comparable. Really good match. And that was followed by the ladder match. And it was the Nemeth brothers, the Hardys, the Rascals, and First Class. And, you know, I've seen a million ladder matches. I've seen better. I've seen worse. But this was very good. Crazy bumps. If you're there to see the crazy bumps, these guys
I'm surprised the Hardys are still able to put their bodies through that much punishment.
Matt Hardy didn't do nearly as much as Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy did the crazy stuff that he's known for. And, you know, this guy's flying from big heights onto ladders, you know, this guy, you know, he does his thing. You know, he gets in that zone and you can't stop him. Physically, you could see he's aging. He's grayish. He's not a kid anymore. But it was a real good match. I gave it 3.5 stars. You know, it is what it is. It's guys doing crazy bumps off of and onto ladders. It's they said the Hardys have done 18 of them.
Wow.
Probably 12 were better and 6 were worse, but it's a good match. It was a really good match. I enjoyed it. Everybody enjoyed it. And did I skip anything? I think that was pretty much it. And then the main event, of course. The main event was Joe Hendry, NXT's Trick Williams, and Mike Santana. And this was too much WWE in that the entrances between the three of them, Trick Williams had an entire gospel choir. You know, Santana had a rapper, and Joe Hendry had the whole shtick, you know, that he always does. And then the match was 13 minutes. The main event was 13 minutes. I think the entrances were as long, if not longer.
It's ridiculous.
And it was disappointing. And
it was a 3-way match, which I find lazy booking anyway.
Yeah, inevitably the one guy rolls out of the ring, takes a 5-minute nap. So what's the point? Especially if it's only 13 minutes. So they're rushing through it. And then, of course, the NXT guy wins. And the fans go home unhappy because everybody was hoping it was going to be Mike Santana's night because he's the local boy made good. And he came out to like a hero's welcome. And they walked out disappointed. Now, if you had half a brain, this doesn't take much genius. Okay, so you're working with WWE and they want their guy to go over or whatnot, and you agree to it. Trick Williams is going to win the match. Fine. So you put the Hardys on last and you leave on a high note with the fans happy. The fans walked out unhappy. That's just stupid. Okay? They popped big time for the Hardys winning. Again, these guys are younger than me. So for them, nostalgia is the Hardys. And so they were so happy that they took the match, and it was like a big comeback. Their last WWE run was not great. They were jobbing to a lot of people. And so here they are, big stars again. The fans would have walked out like dancing on air instead of, wow, that's screwed up. WWE won, and Santana didn't, and a lot of these guys. I saw a lot of Joe Hendry shirts there, and it was a mixed bag. It was really, I thoroughly enjoyed 3 of the 10 matches, and I can honestly say the other 7, I won't remember 6 months from now, to be honest.
You might not even remember them next week. As
I didn't remember some of them today. I was reading.
Exactly. I mean, you're going to be bombarded by another WWE pay-per-view by then, and by the end of the month, there's going to be SummerSlam coming up, and the WWE is going to hit you over the head with that, and no, I agree with you. It's stuff has become so forgettable. It used to be, where I could remember every match in every WrestleMania, for the first, like 10 WrestleManias. I could name all of them, and now I can't even tell you who was in like the last WrestleMania. I can barely remember the main event from the last WrestleMania.
I don't think the WWE, ironically named creative, could tell you, because they're slapping the matches together 2 weeks before the show, because they're more interested in the money
Roll
grabs.
And if they can get celebrities like Jelly Roll to be part of the action.
The meet and greets. They're more interested in that, honestly, coming up with a Cena chair.
You told me 5 years ago that Jelly Roll would be part of a WWE event. I would have said, no. Why would they ever want to have someone like him?
Because the guy sells out arenas. He's a big
I mean, it's ridiculous, though. I mean, it's I think, once they got Logan Paul involved, they were like, hey, anybody that we can get that's going to sell a ticket, we'll throw in there,
Well, guys like Bad Bunny and Logan Paul and Jelly Roll will bring their fans into the mix. And, these guys want it all. They want world domination, and they want the clicks and the, the hits and everything else. And, it's a different business. It's a different business today. And these celebrities can make big money in wrestling also.
And then you also had something else you wanted to say about the venue, which was that after the show, you had to take buses to get back to the parking lot.
Well, it's an interesting experience because the railroad is a half mile from the arena. Now I'm fit and I could handle that. Now some of these fans are morbidly obese, walking heart attacks.
I would imagine you don't want to walk through that neighborhood though.
No, it's not a bad neighborhood. It's not a bad neighborhood.
Okay. Anywhere that's the rail, especially in California, if you're anywhere near railroad tracks at night, it's usually you're taking your life.
No. This is okay, but the point being, it was like a half mile death march for some of these guys, and then there's like 1,000 steps going up the railroad, and not all of these guys could handle it. So either it was the walk or you wait 25 minutes for the free shuttle bus, which adds more time to your evening. So I wanted to see the pre-show, which ultimately I didn't really need to see. It wasn't that great. So I got there about 6:30. The show ended about 11:30, and you stagger home about 1 a.m. or so, and you earn it. I earned those 3 matches that I thoroughly enjoyed. And
how much were tickets? Were you comped?
Well, I had press comps, but I saw the prices. They were not that bad. It wasn't like WWE. I think I saw some like $70 tickets, and I think there was some $40 tickets. I mean, ringside obviously was more, but it wasn't anything like 17,000 for SummerSlam. It was
exactly
quite reasonable.
Well, that's good
in comparison. And it's a different audience.
But
It's not.
considering that you have to look at it as an endurance contest rather than, you had a fun evening of entertainment, that's the kind of thing that, is killing wrestling for a lot of people, is this sort of deal where,
My buddy Ryan Persinger, who's a great photographer, I
and
won't
he'll be on
forget.
the show soon.
Yeah. He said to me, "Hey, the next show is in Massachusetts. You want to go?" And I go, "No, no, I'm not traveling 5 hours. It was, it was, it was not worth traveling. Yeah, it, it's a lot of work for three great matches, and I would three very good to great matches. Let's put it that way. And I would not be going on a religious pilgrimage 5 hours to see the next pay-per-view. There's nothing that would motivate me.
That's a perfect thing to end on, and a perfect note to end on. But before we end, go ahead and plug your book.
Wrestling rings, blackboards, and movie sets. 100 plus stories, 100 or so rare photos, wrestling, film, the educational field, 100 stories on my surreal and tortured life.
Also mention your grab bag offer.
Yeah, if you visit my page, Evan Ginsberg, EvanGinzburg, I'm getting rid of grab bags and autograph photos and back issues of my old sheet, Wrestling Then and Now, which I had a 20-year run with that. Killer Kowalski was a columnist. And also, don't forget, we're wrapping up our GoFundMe for Chris Michaels, a.k.a. Bill Pierce is his real name. The dog's name is Pudgy. And, if you could throw $1 or $2 in the till, we'd appreciate it. That's wrapping up very soon. And, that's pretty much it. I love wrestling. I had a good time yesterday, but it's a little too WWE-ish, and I don't know if their influence on TNA is necessarily going to be good. The backstage skits are corny, and it was hard to hear live in the arena. The sound.
I heard that too. I heard there was a lot of audio problems too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna have silly skits that drag the show out even longer, at least make them audible. Audible.
Good point. Good point. Well, we'll see everyone next week. We got a show already in the can, so we'll play it for you with Tony Fury and good old Mike Leno. So until then, we'll see everyone next week. Have a good evening, everyone. Good night.